where can we use that renewable energy in terms of applying it for making sustainable fuels. So perhaps just to go back, and I guess it's an opportune time to tell you that I guess we're celebrating the 100-year anniversary of the first patent, which was published on FT technology. So it's an old technology with deep German roots, but yet which has fascinated both industry and academia for decades. So it's a journey, I think, which has spanned continents, decades, and a lot of global policy shifts as well, in terms of spanning energy security, fuel shortages, and I think to where we stand today with the technology, which is how can it be reimagined, how can it be repurposed for not around fossil fuel base, but around renewable energies and as a platform for sustainable fuels from sustainable CO2, sustainable hydrogen, and biomass and biogenic feedstocks. So what I'm showing on this slide is just a couple of pathways where SAF can be produced from. And there are various pathways, ranging from the mature and comparatively cheaper technologies such as HEFA, all the way up to, I guess, the less mature, but which have certain advantages in their favor going forward. So on the top right, the power to liquids, which I'll be touching on briefly today. I think the takeaway from this particular slide is that there are numerous technologies with which one can make sustainable aviation fuels and I guess green fuels, broadly speaking. There is not one silver bullet technology, and there should never be an approach taken where we only see that there's one solution and one way to go forward to make sustainable aviation fuels. The demand for SAF in future can only be met by applying a multi-pronged approach to this. So just to touch on Fischer-Tropsch of today then, there are effectively three key phases to it. There's the syngas generation, which I show on the far left. The middle block is I guess, the heart of the process where the synthesis gas is converted into the long hydrocarbons, and then there's the product upgrading. At this moment, the feedstock is really, it's a grey feedstock where it's either natural gas or coal derived, so very CO2 intensive in terms of its production. But it makes products which we all rely on every single day, whether it be kerosene for flying the aeroplane, which I guess a number of people which we flew here on, to powering the cars which we drive, whether it be diesel or petrol. The technology is integrated into our lives. And so finding new ways of producing those fuels, I guess, is crucial. So how can the technology be changed? It turns out that it actually doesn't need a lot of changes made. The biggest change is on the source, the hydrogen source or the carbon source, and changing that from a grey feedstock into green feedstock. So there's the municipal solid waste for a CO2 source, or direct air capture in future. I guess that's a very immature technology, but still viable. And then I guess going into, what the heart of this conference is as well, renewable energy for green hydrogen production, which is an integral part then of preparing that synthesis gas. So the middle block, what changes there in the FT synthesis side is there are some small nuance changes to be made there. Firstly, because the synthesis gas is so expensive to make, we want to maximize its productivity in terms of the product which it will produce. So you want catalysts there which are highly efficient, can tolerate very high water partial pressures, and can maximize the production of those valuable molecules which you want. So primarily the focus will be on green SAF and I guess green naphtha, coming out of this. But there are many synergies, I guess, with having excess carbon there for green hydrogen exports or for making other products. So the technology itself, you'll see, and there's much literature, I guess, or documentation now these days where they'll talk about FT being feedstock agnostic. And I guess all that's being said there is that it doesn't matter where it gets its CO or hydrogen source from, whether it be green, grey, it will make similar products, but now, I guess, in the transition going forward, it has to be off a green feedstock. So I won't dwell too much on this slide, because I guess there we can have much debate around technology readiness levels for different of these technology blocks. The takeaway really is that we're piecing together, in going forward with the technology, different pieces of technology which may be at different levels of maturity. And that brings both opportunity for new technology developments and for significant research, but also, I guess, from a commercial perspective and industrial perspective, risks for is the technology viable, what will the financing needs be, and will it ultimately translate into a bankable project. These are the challenges which I guess the industry is facing largely as a whole now, regardless of the route which one is following to get there. So yeah, a lot of different technologies, but the intent is really that in terms of scaling these, the best approach, given that it's so expensive, is to effectively take baby steps. And here I'll start, in the next couple of slides, how can one leverage partnerships and bringing industry and academia together to make the step change and the step out changes which are required. So I hope I've, made a little bit of a case at this stage, with a limited time for using FT technology to have a meaningful role to play in decarbonizing specifically the aviation sector. Aviation accounts for about 5% of the anthropogenic CO2 emissions, but yet only 3% of the world's population uses aeroplanes to fly. So we have a huge challenge in our hands here, and a relatively disproportionate impact, if one could say, of the aviation sector on global emissions. So there is huge opportunity here for producing sustainable aviation fuel, and for having growth opportunities going forward into the future. So in the next 3 slides, what I'm going to just briefly touch on is one such project, which is an industry-academia collaboration between numerous partners. This is called the Kerosene Consortium, and it's funded under the BMFTR as well. And you can see there are a number of different stakeholders here, ranging from industry partners to academia partners, and it's certainly an integrated project where all of the 4 work packs very effectively influence each other and leverage off the skills which lie within each of those parties. Effectively, there are 4 work packs. There's the catalyst synthesis. Work pack 2 is characterization and modeling, where we use advanced techniques to study the catalysts which are produced or the products which are made. Excuse me. Scale up and demonstration of the FT catalysts, and then lastly the impact analysis, which includes the items like regeneration and the circular economy, which Neil will touch on after me. So what does this consortium achieve? Just very briefly, I guess one of the new catalysts which has been developed has been taken all the way through to semi-commercial production. I'm not going to go through all the bullets there. I presume the slide deck will be made available, other than to highlight the picture on the right, I guess is a crucial takeaway. One generally uses something called the alpha 2 value, or the chain growth probability, as a proxy for the yield which one will get of your desired product. And then the red dots are current and new catalysts compared to blue blocks, which is competitor catalysts here. So the new catalyst, which has been prepared under this consortium, has been demonstrated to be able to achieve these ambitious targets. And I think one of the other items is setting targets at the beginning of the program, which I guess are very definite stretch targets, but which drive both industry and the academia to work together in terms of actually trying to meet or exceed them. So fortunately, in this case, I think it has been largely successful in terms of meeting and exceeding that targeted 80% plus jet fuel yields. That's key to what one wants to do. And I guess those two red blocks at the top there, if you'll indulge me for a moment, just for the students and in the room, yes, one can develop a new catalyst, but the one on top is, I guess, it's the next incremental step. So we have never really arrived at a final solution. There is always something which can be done to make it better. That will likely be, the next step out and the progression towards making something which you think is right even better. So there's huge value in the partnership between the industry and the academia. Just two quick pictures. This just shows some of the scale-up and testing facilities. So you can see there's some significant equipment in the toolkit. We make use of the plant in the background is where the catalyst can be prepared. In the foreground is a Fischer-Tropsch design and demonstration reactor. So this is on our R&T campus in Sasolburg. So some big equipment to use and only at specific portions in the scale-up program. Some products which are made, and I just draw your eye to the bottom right, is the most important one, I think, just to look qualitatively what a new catalyst can do in the right-hand image compared to an older version in terms of the amount of product which can be produced in a one-day period. It's factors more than what was previously produced. So a huge outcome, I guess, for the collaboration. As I start to wrap things up now, just the intent here is to show there are some real projects which are progressing around the world for where FT will be used for producing SAF. So I show there are a number of companies which are doing it. Like the technology is not a silver bullet, the companies which do it are also not. There are many collaborations, which I guess is a paradigm shift for technologies these days, or at least for companies taking hands with each other or industry to make this a success. There are regulatory challenges, which I guess we could spend a whole day talking about how to get mandates resolved. But needless to say, the next few years are going to be both busy and exciting, I think, for the FT and SAF space. You can see just a handful of projects in the EU just highlighted there. It's certainly going to keep industry and the academic partners busy for many years to come, implementing these. So just in conclusion then, Fischer-Tropsch certainly has a place at the table for making sustainable products from green feedstocks. An integrated approach, I think, is what everyone is seeing now is what's required to be most successful. And there are certain benefits which can be leveraged from industry and academia taking hands together. So I guess in many ways the technology is still relevant today. Okay, so going back to the future, there's my timer telling me I'm done. So yeah, many benefits and I guess an exciting path ahead. To close, just some acknowledgements. Firstly to, I guess, a large number of my colleagues in the R&T fraternity on our Sasol 1 site. And then for the generous support of the BMFTR in terms of supporting this project and all the stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robert. It was a very insightful presentation, especially looking at how now Fisher-Tropsch method has evolved. So I think we'll get time to get to the questions. So without wasting time, we move on to the next presenter, Mr. Neil Batty, who is going to look at power to liquid kerosene for sustainable aviation, environmental life cycle assessment insights from KOSEN project. Thank you, Mr. Neil.
Hello everyone, thanks for the opportunity to be here and to present today. I'm basically continuing from what my colleague here has just spoken about on the same project, but looking at the life cycle assessment, the environmental assessment of the production and use of this sustainable kerosene that we are making in the kerosene project. So I'm just going to give a bit of background, show quickly how kerosene is made. Some of this has already been covered, thanks Robert. Then talk about the life cycle assessment itself. Then also talk about the assessment as it's required by the European Renewable Energy Directive, as that's also important outside of Europe, and then I'll summarize. So just a bit of background. Aviation is one of these hard-to-abate sectors, so we cannot replace the carbon with something else. We have to make the fuel sustainable. So it's about where the carbon comes from, not about removing the carbon completely. Europe, for instance, now have binding, well, not now, for quite a while already, binding targets for the amount of sustainable fuels that have to be mixed in with the fuel, the jet fuel that is used for aviation. So on the graph on the right, the blue area represents the amount of biofuels, SAF, sustainable fuel, that needs to be included in aviation fuel, and the green represents a specific target for e-fuels. So they don't just specify renewable fuels in general. There is also a requirement for e-fuels, these power-to-liquid fuels, to be in there. You can see up to 2032, it's quite low, but then it increases very sharply to 2050, where there's 70% of renewable sustainable fuels in the mix, and it's half-half, biofuels and power-to-liquid fuels. Now, the catch is that for the power-to-liquid fuels that we make to count towards these targets, they must comply with the rules that are set out in the European Renewable Energy Directive. These include a minimum of a 70% greenhouse gas emission saving compared to the fossil reference, which is specified in the Act. And then there are other rules about renewable electricity. Additionality, it has to be, you have to use renewables that have been added, and you don't cut into the supply to existing users. Temporal and geographical correlation requirements. And then, like I mentioned, the fuels don't have to be produced in the EU, but the rules still apply. So that's an opportunity, of course, to produce them here, where we have so many renewable resources and plans for green hydrogen. But it's important to keep in mind that the rules need to be complied with, otherwise the fuel might not have an offtake. So you've seen this slide, so I won't repeat it. I'll just highlight that this talk is focused on the life cycle assessment only. So it's not so much about the catalyst itself, it's about the supply chain, the whole supply chain of producing the fuel until the point where it's used in an aeroplane, so combusted and causing the emissions again. So just a quick idea of how it is produced. Just in the middle, my arrows are a bit small there. You have the wind and sun, that's what we're talking about. Here, renewable energies generate the energies. We use that power in an electrolyzer to electrolyze water to produce the green hydrogen. Then we need CO2 sources, the red lines there. We can either get it from an industry point source, like cement plants that we are looking for, power plants, all of them produce waste gases that contain a lot of CO2. Or newer technologies like capturing CO2 directly from the air, direct air capture, although a lot of development still needs necessary in that field. Then the fuel production part in the middle there is exactly what Robert covered in his talk. This is where the catalysts are indispensable. Produce the fuel, use it in aeroplanes, and when the planes fly, the emissions come out. So in a case where you're using direct air capture from the atmosphere, you're actually closing the loop. So you capture the CO2, put it through the whole process, and you emit it again when you fly the planes. So that is a closed carbon loop, if you can make it in that way. So just putting this in a bit more of a schematic that is more relevant for life cycle assessment. So we have two main processes at the beginning. We have to produce the green hydrogen with water electrolysis. And we have a mix, any mix of energy coming in. Of course, for green hydrogen, it must be renewables. Like we all know, it doesn't have to be PV and wind only. It can be any renewable energy source. The next process is the CO2 capture process. So you need a process next to a cement plant or next to a power plant where you can catch the off gas that is normally emitted and capture the CO2 from there. This then all goes through the process that Robert described in his talk. First you convert the CO2 to CO, and you need a specific ratio of hydrogen to carbon monoxide going into the next process. It goes through the Fischer-Tropsch synthesis process, an upgrade process, and at the end we have kerosene, which is our aviation fuel that we want, and then byproducts, naphtha and wax. And because this Fischer-Tropsch process is very exothermic, we have excess heat there as well that we can export as a product, because in life cycle assessment you can get a credit for that if it is used somewhere else. In terms of circular things that we do, some of those reactions produce water, so we recycle that back to the electrolysis section. The other thing is that if we have the CO2 producing plant, the cement plant, power plant next or close enough to where we produce the fuels, we can use some of that excess heat to cover the heat demand of the CO2 process, because it is very heat intensive. So for the LCA, we need a system boundary, and that is the block that I've shown there. And we are interested in the flows that cross the boundaries, so water coming in, electricity coming in, products out, and all the emissions from all the processes and all the feed streams that come in. And for those who do LCA, just briefly, the scope of the study is cradle to grave, so it's from raw material extraction to where the product is used. For this presentation, the locations, I've selected Germany and South Africa. We use process simulation and literature for our detailed modeling studies. I won't say that. And yes, so for the presentation today, I've assumed a 50-50 mixture of PV and onshore wind electricity. The assumption with the Renewable Energy Directive analysis is that except for this 70% saving in GHG emissions, we assume that all the other requirements have been met. So the check that we do is, can we meet the 70% reduction target that is specified in the regulation? Okay, looking at the first results, so this is a normal LCA following the procedure that is standardized, comparing the kerosene that we produce or intend to produce with the footprint of conventional jet fuel, Jet A1. So these two bars represent the greenhouse gas emissions. And the final result, it shows the contributions also of different components of the process to the total emission, but the final result is just the green-blue diamond in the middle with a number on it. This is the case for CO2 captured from a cement plant. On the left, it's when this is done in Germany. On the right, in South Africa. As you can see, both of them, we are definitely well below the conventional jet fuel greenhouse gas emissions anyway. So we're already more sustainable than what is happening at the moment. Just to show the main causes of the greenhouse gas emissions, at the top, the grey block is the combustion of the fuel. We can do nothing about this. The fuel is combusted. That's where the energy comes from to fly. In the South African case, there's a small emission added for transport to the EU, so assuming that it will be produced in Southern Africa and shipped all the way there. There's a small direct CO2 emission from the production process that we might be able to play with. The biggest problem there is the CO2 capture heat. So, like I said, the capture process to capture CO2 from these off gases or from air needs a lot of heat. And there are strategies to manage that, but it's something that needs to be done. I'll show how this is done. We obviously need a lot of electricity to electrolyze the water to produce green hydrogen. But on the plus side or the minus side, we get a credit below the zero line for the CO2 that we capture. So that helps to bring the final results to below the black line. So in this case, it's exactly the same, except that we are now capturing the CO2 from air with direct air capture. And the advantage of that process is that the carbon capture plants can be run with heat pumps to get the heat, to meet that high heat demand. And when this heat pump is run with renewable electricity, that impact reduces. So you can see on the right-hand side, the orange blocks are no longer there. And of course, we're still well below the conventional value, and very much so. This is based on the assumption that these DAC systems, or the supply chain, is completely standalone. So it's running only on renewable electricity, renewable heat. It's not connected to any grid or any other sources of carbon that would give it more. So this is a very best case scenario, completely standalone. Now, moving on to the analysis for the Renewable Energy Directive. It's pretty much the same as LCA, but there are a few changes and concessions as well. The first one is, like I said, right there on the right-hand side, electricity for the hydrogen electrolysis is now zero. So there was a little block on the previous slides that had that emission from the energy used for electrolysis, but this is gone because in the current Renewable Energy Directive, to incentivize the addition of renewables, they allow us to assign a zero emission to renewable electricity, as long as that electricity is formally renewable. And that's where I said the other rules, we've assumed that we have met all the conditions for that already. So for that reason, we don't have to count the emissions associated with that electricity. So you can see there for the cement case, we are well below the fossil reference specified in the Act, but not yet below the red case. So the fossil reference is sitting at 94 grams of CO2 per megajoule of fuel, and 70% below that is the red dashed line, which is 28.2. So if you want to comply with the Act, you have to be below the red line, and in this case, we are not, and the main culprit is that orange block. If we look at this again for the case where we get CO2 from air with the standalone systems, we meet the targets. So this shows the Renewable Energy Directive in action. You can't just do a little bit, include a little bit of renewables. You must really work hard to meet the targets, which is the goal of the Act. We need to save the planet. We have to really work hard to achieve those targets. Now I have to say that if we were to still get CO2 from cement plants, but we can get rid of that orange block for the CO2 capture, of course, it doesn't matter where you get your CO2 from, you will meet the targets for the Energy Directive. And that can be done by using waste heat from somewhere, heat from biomass. If you have all those resources nearby, wherever your plant is located, you will meet those targets. In this case, we've assumed that the heat source is a fossil source. So just to conclude, in all the cases, all the final results are well below the references, so below the fossil reference and below the conventional jet fuel reference. And this confirms, as we know, that PTL kerosene is part of a solution to decarbonizing the aviation industry. As we've seen, the DAC systems, the direct air capture systems, outperform the others, and they meet the 70% reduction target. But like I've said, if we manage to get our heat from a sustainable source as well, we can meet the target irrespective of where the CO2 comes from. And what this highlights is the very important role of integrated heat management inside the production process, but also being able to transfer waste heat between processes. This would only be possible if we have all the plants located together next to each other. Otherwise, you won't be able to transfer water from one to the other or transfer heat. So there may be logistical issues, infrastructure issues associated with that, but it's not impossible. So just as a final statement, to leverage all the resources we have here to produce not only hydrogen, but also its derivative fuels and export a high value-added product, we obviously have to maximize the use of renewables. Like I said, not some renewables. We need to really incorporate renewables into production processes. Maximum heat integration, like I've just explained, and policy harmonization. So when a process is being designed, we need to already think about what the requirements are for the markets you intend to sell the product in. So we are not in Europe, but if we want to sell this sustainable aviation fuel to Europe, we need to comply with those rules. So that's important to keep in mind right from the start. Okay, and that is all I wanted to talk to you about today. Thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge our partners, the logos there, and of course the BMFTR for the continued interest and funding of our project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nave. I think you highlighted a very important point, especially when it comes to CO2, in the role of CO2 in the synthetic fuel. So it's very, very important that we look at that, because without that, then we are not able to make synthetic fuel. So I think that is now looking at life cycle assessment and all that kind of things. And I think we'll get to their question on that. And I think without wasting time, I now want to call on the next presenter, Emmanuel Remo. So please come on stage from Waska. So Emmanuel will be presenting about towards sustainable energy in Africa, a techno-economic and digital twin strategy for green hydrogen production from integrated hydro PV system. Thank you. Take the podium.
All right, thank you very much for this opportunity, and I want to start on the existing protocol. Today is a special day for me, especially because today is my birthday, so I'm happy to be here to do this presentation. All right, thank you very much. All right, so before I start this presentation, I just want to start with a story of an email that I received from our CEO of an hydrogen organization in Germany. I think that was last year. He said he was selling his hydrogen vehicle, and one of the reasons he gave was because of the cost of buying hydrogen, refueling the hydrogen car, and also the distance of the hydrogen refueling station. So that means that cost is very, very important in the discussion we are having. So, and this is one of the things that also prompted this study, which is, this is not the one I'm talking about. I think there's a mistake. Towards sustainable energy in Africa, a techno-economic.
The presentation is not yet loaded, I think.
Okay, there was a mix-up. Okay, all right. So while we are waiting for the slide to come up, so just an interactive section. So I wanted to ask our participants if hydrogen is more expensive than fossil fuel. I think a lot of people, especially in Africa, kind of tend towards using fossil fuel because they cannot afford buying hydrogen. So for us to be able to make it marketable, the cost of hydrogen has to really come down. So that's why this study is very important. So I'm going to be presenting very soon. Can I use my laptop?
Are people not afraid of hydrogen?
Sir?
Are they not afraid of hydrogen in their cars?
In Africa? No, I don't think they are afraid of.
What about gas in the car?
No. I think in my country, for now, there's no real scientific study about that, but I don't think people are afraid of if there are safety measures put in place. Should I take my laptop? Okay. All right. So, okay, he said I can connect this. Okay. All right. Let me do that. Okay. All right. So finally, I think I have it here now. All right. So toward sustainable energy in Africa, a techno-economic and digital twin strategy for green hydrogen production from integrated hydro PV, FPV system. All right. So I have my outline, introduction, study area, materials and method, result and discussion, and conclusion. So as an introduction, Africa leads the world in solar power potential, average long-term practical potential. As you can see on the graph, Africa has about 4.51 kilowatt hour per day compared to other continents in the world. So according to a German solar industry association report, Africa has the world's largest floating PV power generating potential. The continent has over 100,000 square kilometers of freshwater reservoirs that can actually be used for floating farms. So, and exploiting just about 1% of these can actually give about 100 gigawatts potential, more than 8 times the continent's overall installed solar potential, and 167 terawatt hour of yearly energy output. So what does that mean? That Africa has a large potential. I think we've been hearing that from some other presentation. However, Africa still largely depends on fossil fuel. So Africa is the 4th largest emitter of CO2 in the world, with South Africa, Egypt, Algeria, and Nigeria leading the rate of emission. So as you can see on the map, this is a map of African CO2 emission as at 2022. So, and it's increasing yearly. So, so that takes me to the question, so what is a floating PV system? Can green hydrogen production and utilization from renewable energy like this, can it help to lower these emission rates? So a floating PV, that's a floating photovoltaic, is a system that installs solar panels on floating structures anchored to the surface of a body of water, such as a lake, quarry, or reservoir. So this technology harnesses solar energy without using valuable land. It helps to save from using land, and land can be used for other things like farming and some other important purposes like housing. So, and the water cooling effects can increase the panel's efficiency by up to 15%. So, recent research has shown that integrating floating PV technology into African hydropower dams has enormous potentials. This integration can double installed capacity and improve energy generation by about 58%, which can play a pivotal role in Africa's renewable energy transition. So in this study is a continuation of a study that we are still on it. We conducted a techno-economic analysis, an overview of a detailed twin strategy for green hydrogen production from integrated hydro FPV system. So the question is, okay, like a detailed twin system, for example, can be used for different purposes. It can be used for real-time monitoring of FPV outputs and green hydrogen production. And I imagined, like we're going to Dara green hydrogen facility, I imagined building a kind of data twin for that kind of green hydrogen plant, it will really help a lot. All right, so a digital twin which is a virtual replica of the physical system, can provide real-time visualization of green hydrogen production from integrated FPV hydropower operations. It can track key variables such as solar irradiance, FPV outputs, and green hydrogen production, allowing operators to monitor system dynamics effectively and respond promptly to operational changes for improved efficiency, reliability, and reduction in cost of production. So a study is being done in Harvard, and it was reported in an article by HP Enterprise Development. And the article says that digital twins accelerate a green hydrogen future. So as reported in the article, the researchers leverage on supercomputers, computational fluid mechanics, and AI to boost hydrogen production by 20%, while driving down the cost of hydrogen production units by 25%, according to the article. So also, a researcher, that's Petrus, he said if we can extend the life of hydrogen electrolyzers and simultaneously make them more efficient, it could have a significant impact on our energy future. So also a study was carried out by NAS et al. So in the study it says that production costs can be reduced by an estimated 5 to 15% through digital twins and supporting interventions. So in the study, as you can see on the graph, the renewable energy, that's electricity generation, was the cost about 5% reduction, energy storage 10%, electrolyzer and balance of plants 10 to 20%, transport, storage and transmission 5% reduction, ammonia plant 10 to 20%, and then the total levelized cost of production was reduced by 5 to 15%. So this shows that adopting this technology can actually reduce the cost of production. So now, the study area. This study is focused on Africa, which is the world's second largest continent, and is bounded by the Mediterranean Sea, the Red Sea, the Indian Ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean. So as you can see on my graph, Africa has a lot of PV power generation potential, and this graph was by Solar GIS. Our study evaluates green hydrogen potential from FPV and the techno-economic analysis in 31 African countries, including Egypt, Ethiopia, Ghana, Nigeria, and others. The materials and methods. So a summary, so we did a review of digital twin application in green hydrogen production. We estimated the green hydrogen potential from the FPV using 3 scenarios, S1 to S3, as the current status, improved efficiency, and higher efficiency. So these are based on the efficiency of 3 electrolyzers, proton exchange membrane, liquid alkaline electrolyzer, and the high temperature electrolyzer. So we also carried out the techno-economic analysis of green hydrogen production to determine the levelized cost of hydrogen. So also, which I didn't include, we also did CO2 reduction, that's abatement, to see how much CO2 will be reduced. All right, so these are some of the data that was used. So these are a data of electrolyzer technical targets by US Department of Energy. So on the first scenario, which is the base year 2022, the current status shows that the efficiency of PEM is 55, but then there's a target to reach 51 by 2026 and 46 by 2031. Alkaline, the efficiency is about 55, targets 2026 to reach 52, and in 2031, 48. So the same thing for HT, 47, 44, and 42. All right, so we also use secondary data of FPV potentials from African hydropower dams and electrolyzer technical targets to determine the green hydrogen potential. All right, so looking at our results, So the hydrogen production potential increases progressively. Those are the three scenarios from S1 to S3 across all countries, which is Egypt, Mozambique, Ethiopia, and Nigeria. They show the highest, as you can see on my graph. So, and under the S1 and they show the highest under the S1 and S3 scenario due to their abundant solar resources and their favorable climatic conditions. Other countries with strong potential include South Africa, Sudan, and Ghana, which also exhibits constant gains with improved efficiency. Looking at the LOCH, that's the levelized cost of hydrogen. So looking at the first scenario, the current status, as you can see, the first graph. So HT exhibit the highest cost, typically around 6 to 8 euros per kg in most regions, such as Egypt, South Africa, and Morocco, due to their high energy intensity and low technology maturity, while Burundi, Gabon, and Rwanda exhibited the highest LOCH. For the PEM electrolyzer, the system showed moderate costs of around between 3 to 4 euros per kg in countries like Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana. Then for alkaline technology remains the most cost-effective option with LOCH values between 1.8 to 2.5 euros per kg, particularly in nations with strong solar potential like Namibia, where we are currently, Egypt, Morocco, and Algeria. Yeah. All right, so for the second scenario, we could see that for the improved electrolyzer efficiency, that's if the efficiency is increased, the PEM and alkaline technologies convert to around 1.2 to 1.6 euros per kg, while HT drops to around 1.4 to 1.8 euros per kg. So countries such as Namibia, Morocco, and Egypt demonstrate the lowest LOCH, benefiting from high solar irradiance and low renewable energy cost. Landlocked countries like Burkina Faso and Malawi achieve noticeable cost reduction, improve electrolyzer efficiency, actually narrows the gap among the technologies. All right, so for the last scenario, which is the higher, that's the higher electrolyzer efficiency, which if it can be achieved by 2031, the difference between the technologies nearly disappears, with PEM, alkaline, and HT all showing similar performance across all the 31 countries. So countries with abundant renewable potential, again Namibia, Egypt, Kenya, Morocco, and South Africa reach the lowest LOCH of approximately like 0.8 euros per kg. And this indicates strong potential for competitive green hydrogen exports. Even nations like Burundi or Congo record values about 1 euro per kg, confirming that efficiency gains can overcome many geographical limitations. All right, so we are still working on the conceptual model using MATLAB, but this is just a demo of a green hydrogen production digital twin monitoring system dashboard, which you can use to monitor the FPV power outputs, the hydrogen production, water level of the dam, the FPV and structural health, electrolyzer health and prognostic and health management, reservoir and sustainability, so, and then also real-time decision support. So this is still in progress, and this is just a demo. All right, so across Africa, and in conclusion now, across Africa, improvement in electrolyzer efficiency are the strongest determinant of hydrogen cost reduction, including the cost of electricity, though. So alkaline is the most effective in the short term, but PEM and HT becomes highly competitive as efficiency improves. So North African countries like Morocco, Egypt, and Algeria, and Southern African countries like Namibia, South Africa, they emerge as the prime candidates for large-scale hydrogen development due to the excellent renewable energy resources and favorable cost trends. So in conclusion, lastly, so if high electrolyzer efficiencies, that's the S3, are achieved like with the age of data twin, green hydrogen could become economically viable across the entire continent, driving energy transition, industrial decarbonization, and export opportunities. Thank you. These are some of the references, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Our next presenter are online. Hope that they will be able to join us very fast. I think the next presenter I'm given here is Mr. or Ms. Nde. Sir, can you please project your presentation? Mrs. Okay. Yeah. So she's going to look at scientific combination of agroforestry and agri-PV. So please, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me, please? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
She wants to know if we can.
Yes, we can hear you. Oh.
Okay. Do you see the screen also, please?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So, can I start?
Yes, you can start.
So, good afternoon, dear all. My name is Icera. I have the honor to share with you the finding of my research based on scientific combination of agroforestry and agri-PV technologies to regenerate nature in post-mining area. So here is the content that the presentation will go through. First of all, we have the background. Mining, an essential industry for extracting renewable mineral and resources, plays a central role in enabling modern technologies, particularly those driving the energy transition, where critical minerals such as silicon, lithium, nickel, cadmium, and graphites are indispensable for producing lithium-ion batteries which power electrical vehicles, renewable energy storage, and portable electronics. Similarly, copper mining is vital for expanding electricity infrastructure, which where we have the copper as a higher conductivity and durability, which make it essential in power grid, electric motors, but also charging station. So, beyond technological benefits, mining contribute to broader economic and social developments. Nevertheless, the expansion of mining to satisfy technological needs brings a variety of environmental issues. The major environmental issues associated with abandoned mine sites are acidification water need and energy required were known from these equations. And finally, the third objectives were to calculate the potential biomass produced after each seasons using this formula of the total biomass produced. So looking for the results, the first one were the heavy metal concentration in the aerial part and in the root part of the plant. And for sunflower, the concentration of zinc, arsenic, cadmium, chromium, and cobalt were higher at the aerial part, while bamboo and mustard had higher concentration of all metals in their root part. So here we have the transformation factor of each plant for each metals, and it showed that sunflower had the highest transformation factor, exceeded 1 for almost all the metals. This typically indicates efficiency for phytoextraction. In contrast, bamboo and mustard have transformation factor lower than 1 for all metals, suggesting their phytostabilization abilities. Moreover, the figure 3 showed the remediation efficiency with all the metals combined. It showed that zinc and plum exceeded 100%, while arsenic and cobalt had the lowest remediation efficiency. This is due to the important amount of the zinc and lead that bamboo and sunflower take from the soil, and also the low phytoavailability of the arsenic and cobalt and the lack of study of these metals. And this can be seen in this figure, where the final concentration of zinc and plum were negative, and arsenic and cobalt show no difference from their initial and final metal concentrations. In addition, the horizontal gas line represents the accepted limit of metal in soil set by FAO, and this shows that within one growing season, all the metals were already under regulatory limit except for copper and cobalt, which need 2 and 9 more years with self limits. About the water and energy required, the system comprises 1,470 solar panels generating 2,530.7 kilowatt-hours of energy. And the total daily water, the hydroelectric energy, and the remaining energy are present in table 3. In addition, the total dry biomass obtained from the system after the harvest was 735.7 kilograms in the table 3.4. So in summary, the theoretical model designed for the restoration of abandoned mine sites so particular promise for the ecological rehabilitation. It saw the possibility to remediate the Shanghai Island Dam within one growing seasons, except for copper and cobalt, to generate renewable energy, enabling sites energy self-sufficiency, but also produce an important potential of biomass. Moreover, the pathway not only mitigates disposal risk, but establishes a closed-loop system that couples environmental recovery with renewable energy productions. Although these results are positive, not all metals were studied due to unavailable data using the plant studies. So, further research should conduct a field experiment to confirm its effectiveness and demonstrate its potential relevance, and use the biomass utilization for energy purposes to solve the critical limitation of the future utilization, which is the self-management of contaminated biomass. So these are some of the references. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sar. Please don't go away because we have a panel discussion, so stick in there. And a very interesting presentation on issue of agrophotovoltaic and all these kind of things. I heard that the solar panels, they work better under, when there's planes that are glowing under them. Isn't it, Prof. Katende?
Tell me more.
We will discuss later. Okay. So the final presenter for this session, before we go to the roundtable discussion, is Professor Ansa Vanagta, who is going to look at the design of and performance of a solar PV pump. Prof, you can take the floor. It's also online. Prof, are you available? Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm available. I'm joining this.
Okay, you can take the floor. We can hear you very well.
So is my screen visible?
Not yet, but I hope it will be visible soon. Yes, now it's visible. And your face.
Okay, thank you all for this opportunity to present in this conference. So, actually, Franco is my student at Pan-African University for Department of Energy Sciences, including climate change in Nigeria. I'm a professor of sustainable energy at Jimma University, India. So I'm going to make a presentation on design and performance simulation of a solar PV pump with integrated water cooling for irrigation applications. So this is the brief outline of the presentation. Introduction, literature review, methodology, results, discussion, conclusion, and recommendation. So I have to rush since there are many slides. So actually we have been witnessing a rapid declining trend in PV pricing, and a large scale PV is being harnessed. And especially when you consider electricity from decentralized solar, it can present a cost-effective solution to meet the energy needs, and more importantly, it can play a central role in achieving the goals of the water energy food nexus. Basically, if we is looking at a PV panel, we know solar energy spans across the spectrum, but any semiconductor has got a finite and fixed energy band there. So photons having more than required energy, the energy will be simply dissipated as heat. But we know the PV systems suffer from efficiency issues due to the temperature variation. So in this background, based on a thorough literature review, I'm trying to bridge the recent gap that was specifically noticed. So this study introduces a solar water pump with an integrated cooling, targeting improvement in energy efficiency and environmental impact. So when it comes to the problem statement, basically we know what is the issue. So as and when the cell operating temperature increases, the current increases, the voltage tend to decrease. Even the panel overheating can reduce the lifespan because of the degradation related issues. So on the whole, this calls for an effective PV panel temperature regulation. So if you try to see how the temperature can try to affect the overall power, not only the maximum power, the actual power level and the voltage level. So as temperature keeps on increasing, not only the maximum power output tend to decrease, even the voltage is trying to reduce. So the problem is well defined, but while trying to look at the possible solution, so what we found is many studies have been conducted trying to simultaneously cool the PV panel while trying to aim for an improvement in the electrical efficiency as such. So many studies have been conducted. Some studies focus on photovoltaic thermal collectors integration. So these are the studies where some improvement in efficiency has been noted. But to be able to quantify what is the net gain, for example, this study did not account for pumping power that has been used to simultaneously affect the cooling. Even this study, for example, what are the major and minor losses, frictional flow losses, hydraulic losses, they have not been taken into account. But the study simply tried to project what would be the People have used phase change materials, and some attempts have been made to use beam splitting. So all these studies, while targeting an improvement in efficiency, there are some drawbacks that have not yet been addressed. For example, some studies try to focus on spraying water on the front side panel of the PV panel. But what is the effect of the weight reflection? What is the extent of evaporation losses which will go to the water? So all these things have not been quantified. In some cases where people try to go for passive cooling, the efficiency is found to be too small. So against this background, even some of the recent reviews, 2025, 2023, still point out the need for a holistic study to quantify the net benefit after detecting the additional energy expenditure for pumping the cooling water. So in this context, considering the dual purpose application, which involves using solar PV panels for water pumping from the ground using the submersible pump, cooling the panels with the pumped water and storing it, especially for nocturnal irrigation. This aspect is very important in certain contexts. So this represents broadly an unexplored territory that has been taken into account while carrying out this project as part of the research gap. So the research objective is, the main objective is to design and carry out the performance simulation of this pump with an integrated water cooling or irrigation application, with the specific objectives being to gauge the effect of variation in daily, monthly and annual temperature range variation, to design model optimize the performance of the pump with a self-integrated cooling system that uses the pump to water itself. Unlike in general other applications where separate water cooling system is to be installed, the solar PV pump is pumping water itself. The pumped water itself could be used for cooling the panel. That has been what considered in this field. The other objective is to contrast the PV panel performance with and without the cooling system. The last one is to design a controller for the activation of a solenoid valve, where we try to see what is the threshold temperature beyond which panel needs cooling, below which the cooling is not worth enough as far as the net benefit is concerned. So against these research objectives, so the research questions are whether or not the water cooling system becomes a significant advantage. Is the temperature of the environment a significant factor? Can a water cooling integrated PV pump for irrigation application, when cascaded with an appropriate controller, can it make a difference?
Yeah, Prof, I think the time is moving a bit faster because you only have 10 minutes and you have used almost 6 to 7. So, and I haven't seen yet the results. Please.
So this study also tries to address these 4 sustainable development goals. The methodology that has been used is first we try to come up with a mathematical predictive model for the PV panel. Then we try to make a prediction of the panel. We try to validate using the experimental result. Then we try to simulate the performance of the system with cooling, without cooling. Comparing the performance, then we try to come up with a power control system. So this is the standard mathematical model we are familiar. So this is the plot verification that has been considered, requiring 30 cubic of water. This is the submersible pump specification. 3 solar panels with these specifications have been employed in this study. These are the panel data. Now, for example, the cell has got different layers: glass, ethylene, vinyl acetate, Kevlar, PV cell, other layer. Using these properties, heat flux in each of these layers, we try to make a prediction what is the peak power. For example, 340. We try to match with the specification panel. They are matching. Thus, the mathematical model selected has been validated, both in terms of peak power as well as the current. Then, apart from standard test condition, when the temperature varies, also we try to make a prediction for subsequent utilization in the simulation. So the effect of the ambient temperature change on a daily basis, monthly basis, yearly basis has been predicted. So to consolidate the performance of this system, then we try to go ahead with the prediction of the temperature within the cell of different layers, upper glass, PV cell, bottom cover, across different layers. Then we try to compare, we experimentally measure the backside temperature of the cell. So at different times, 15 experiments have been conducted. So when we try to compare the predicted data from the ANSYS simulation with the experimentally measured data, the maximum deviation is found to be only 7.3%, and the difference in temperature prediction is only 3.9%. The correlation coefficient is very high, validating the numerical simulation result with the experimental data. Then we try to formulate a jacket cooling system underneath the panel. Then we want to compare the prediction, numerical prediction, because methodology has already been validated. So we try to simulate the performance of the panel without cooling, with cooling. These are the data that goes into the simulation. These cooling means we will try to vary the mass flow rate as the irradiance is varied. So this is the temperature prediction predicted without cooling. This is with cooling. You can see with cooling the maximum temperature is 54 degrees Celsius, whereas with cooling it is only 306. That means it is only 36, 37 degrees. So 54 to 37 degrees, that is the improvement on account of integrated cooling system. So this is all across, temperature distribution all across, without cooling and with cooling, as made the numerical simulation results. Overall, if you try to see, when you try to compare the actual power level, current, the maximum power at standard condition 340 watts, with cooling it is 326, without cooling it is only 269. So there is a substantial improvement in implementing the cooling, where the result is more closer to the standard test condition. So here we show the variation effect of the cooling on the efficiency as well as power. So as the irradiance increases, this is the standard test condition result. So this is with cooling, this is without cooling, even it is falling, whereas with cooling it is able to stay very close to the standard test condition result. So even the power output, as the irradiance is increasing, power output is increasing, the trend is very close to the standard. So there seems to be a substantial improvement on account of the panel. So what I have been telling in the literature, for example, whether the power consumed by the cooling system has been considered or not. For example, with cooling, the panel temperature we are able to maintain at 301 to 303. This is outlet water temperature. Power removed by the cooling system compared to the heat being generated. So remaining power is very, very small. So for example, when we try to quantify the net power output after subtracting the losses, hydraulic losses and pumping power. So with regard to the maximum output, 149. For example, net power output is 155, it has increased. Compared to standard efficiency, without cooling 15 point, whereas with cooling 16.52. Similarly, at various levels, these have been predicted using the simulation results. So subsequently, this is the implementation of the system. As and when here there is a floating valve control from the tanker. So when the tanker is full, water goes directly to the irrigation. There is a solenoid valve connected to a temperature sensor using an Arduino controller here, where only when the temperature exceeds beyond the threshold, 303 Kelvin. So activation of the solenoid valve happens when the temperature is less than. So here it is activated. So water goes direct to the tanker. When the temperature exceeds 303, so solenoid valve is deactivated, water is diverted through the cooling system. Because 303 as a threshold has been evaluated carefully looking at the results. What is the net benefit after accounting for the power consumption by the cooling water itself, including hydraulic, major, minor process. So this system can be implemented. So when I come to the conclusions, that standard radiant test condition cooling system is able to be maintained at 302 Kelvin against 327 when there is no cooling. So power output reaches 327 against 226 watts without cooling. Cooling system is able to increase power by this much amount per module. That is almost 75% of the power output without cooling. Pumping power penalty has already been considered, so net performance improvement is seen in almost 22%. This cooling system can result in substantial energy savings of 224 kilowatt hour per year, enhance the water volume approximately 448 cubic meters per year. So these are some of the references. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you. Indeed, I think the cooling system really improves the performance of these systems. Yes, that's what I got only. Okay, I was told that Maria is here now. Not here. Oh, online. Okay, so we have one last presenter before Maria is even present. She's going to present about absorption spectra and photocurrent density of titanium doped copper. So please, Maria, go ahead.
Prof's presentation is still being shared.
Yeah, we can see the presentation.
Yeah, I'm trying to stop. Okay.
Okay, Maria, I urge you to stick to time. You have 10 minutes to present.
Can you all see my presentation?
Yes, everyone can see your presentation.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maria Renewable, a student from UNAM. I'm currently busy with my research, so today I'll be just presenting my research progress without results. This is the table of content and starting off with the introduction. So the rising global demand for renewable energy and sustainable sources like solar energy, green hydrogen has led to increased focus on development of photovoltaic materials. And these materials need to be developed in such a way that they are inexpensive and they are environmental friendly materials. And this is when our thin film comes in. So thin film is defined as a solid layer of material that is deposited onto a substance, on a substrate with a certain thickness. And the good thing about thin film is that they have small thickness and they exhibit special characteristics that are not seen in bulk of the same material. So thin films are used in flexible solar panels, portable solar devices, building integrated photovoltaics, and reason being, as much as their properties can be altered, they have lower manufacturing costs, and with research going on, typically improving with newer technologies. So now what is the problem? So titanium dioxide has limitations due to its wider band gap and poor visible light absorption. And on the other hand, copper oxide is efficient and under visible light, but it suffers from stability. So now the formation of heterojunctions with other metal oxides have demonstrated the ability to overcome these limitations. Hence, the aim of this project is to fabricate titanium dioxide, copper oxide thin films using molecular precursor method and analyze the absorption spectra as well as their photocurrent densities. My research objectives are therefore to synthesize titanium copper oxide thin films using molecular precursor method, and the second objective is to assess the structural and optical properties of the fabricated thin films, and also to determine the photocurrent densities of these thin films. So why is this study important? So the findings of this study could have a significant impact on the advancement of metal oxides based on solar energy technologies. And moreover, the development of inexpensive and efficient metal oxide semiconductors is another significance, and overall contribution to sustainable energy solutions. So let me take you through the literature review on metal oxide semiconductors. So one of the most studied semiconductor is titanium dioxide, and this is dating back to 1972. The year Honda and Fukushima first demonstrated its photocatalytic properties in water splitting under UV light. And their demonstration on photocatalysis reaction of titanium when exposed to light, this has led to now an increase in the study of photoelectrochemical properties of semiconductors. In addition, cuprous oxide is reported to be a promising metal oxide that can be used as a good semiconductor in thin films. However, limited stability and fast charge recombination limits the photocatalytic activities of these individual semiconductors. And this is now where Sun and others in 2020 comes in, and they reported that the heterojunction of titanium and copper oxide increases the light absorption properties of both materials. So let me take you through my methodology. So I have prepared the solution that contains titanium ions and copper oxide ions using a molecular precursor method. And after this, I mix them in ratios of 1:1 to form a composite precursor solution. And then this solution was now coated on the substrate dropwise, and I used a two-way spin coating method. And after spin coating, the thin films were subjected to annealing. So heating actually improves their physical and electrical properties by reducing defects and just relieving the internal stress through the process of heating and then slowly cooling. Then after that, I have my final product of thin films, which now are subject to characterization using different techniques. So I'm currently working on using XRD diffraction to determine the twist-joint structure and phase compositions of the fabricated thin films. And another technique I'll be using UV spectroscopy to look at the optical absorption properties of the thin films. In addition to these, scanning electron microscope will be used to analyze the thin film surface, topography, morphology, and thickness. And the last one will be looking at the photocurrent density by using a conventional 3-electrode system. So in conclusion, as the world is moving on to a more efficient sources of energies, efficiency still remains a big challenge when it comes to photovoltaic materials. However, different researches have been now carried out, and one of the possible solutions to this problem is the formation of heterojunctions. And as much as now we're using different materials, we have now to look at the environmental aspects of these materials. Are they environmental friendly? Is the technologies that we're using also not harming the environment? So for future research, I would want to look at how the precursor concentration, solvent type, and annealing temperature will affect the properties of the thin films. These are the references that I used, and this is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What a session that we had, from synthetic fuels to PVs to nanotechnology, was very refreshing, and I hope that we learned quite a lot. I think we are now going to delve deep into the questions. Just for us not to, just to be on the same page, I think we have Robert here. I think he spoke about sustainable aviation fuels. And I think we have, next is Mr. Mel, he spoke about kerosene. And my brother here, digital twins, that's all what I got. Yeah? And many nice things. Maria, titanium doped copper thin film, and Prof Ansa and Ms. Sal, their presentation was more on photovoltaics and agri-photovoltaic. I think we can address questions in that direction, just to remind you about the 6 presenters. 3 are online, 3 are with us. So maybe we can pose the questions and then we interact from that angle. After that, then we're going to have a group picture with the presenters who are here, and this session will be concluded. So the Q&A, if you don't have to stop.
Okay, thank you very much. I think my question goes to Neil. It was very interesting with the life cycle assessment comparing the PTX with the conventional jet fuels, but I was wondering if you've also done the techno-economics to see how these two processes are comparing, and how close are we to actually commercializing these catalytic processes that are more environmentally friendly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. Yes, I within the project, yes, we are focusing very much on the techno-economics as well. So in the end, we are hoping to have a combined assessment of environmental impact. Like today, I only presented greenhouse gas emissions, but we are also looking at other impacts together with the techno-economic assessment. Unfortunately, I cannot comment on the techno-economics. I just don't have the numbers with me. But yes, this is done by one of our project partners in Germany. And it's quite a large component of the work that we're doing. Sorry, I can't give you any numbers, but it's happening. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Still on the kerosene project. I want to ask question. Kerosene and the aviation fuel, they are all fossil fuels, and they also generate carbon dioxide. Actually, if you practically those who use kerosene could see that kerosene produces a lot of carbon monoxide. So now we want to know: is it the process of catalytic? Is it the catalytic process? Because I see you say you use a fish trough process. Is it the process that makes kerosene better in aviation? Because we know kerosene is also very toxic, and so on. So I'm not an expert in that. I'm only speaking from practical aspect of it. Those who use paraffin.
Great, thanks for the question. I think, yeah, the catalysis side is so the Fischer-Tropsch will produce kerosene, whether it's with a traditional catalyst or with a future catalyst tailed towards SAF. So the CO2 production comes from, obviously from the jet engines burning that fuel, but the catalyst is using in the FT process to produce the sustainable aviation fuel from the green hydrogen source and either the biogenic CO2. So the catalysts are improving the efficiency of the Fischer-Tropsch process because the green molecules and the molecules which go into it are so expensive to make. You want to maximize the productivity of the final product that you're getting. So in this term, the long chain hydrocarbons, which will eventually be hydrocracked to make the kerosene. You want to make as much of that as possible with the molecules going in. I hope that answers the question if I understood correctly. So your CO2 output from your jet engine is going to stay the same. That will only be addressed by, I guess, engine efficiencies, but the life cycle of the CO2 will remain unchanged if it's coming from a renewable or biogenic CO2 source. It's not going to lead to more CO2 being emitted than what currently is.
Thank you very much for a good presentation to all the presenters that shared their expressed interest. I would want to ask my question to Maria. I think she's online. I hope she's still there. She spoke about the titanium copper dough productions of the thin film. So my question to Maria is just to know why it was very important to dope titanium with copper. Does it improve the electrical properties or any other optical properties of the final thin films? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. Like I said in the presentation, so titanium on its own, it has challenges due to its wider band gap. And for copper oxide, it has low light absorption. So when we combine these two, we improve their properties, not just their electrical properties, but their also ability to absorb light, and this in all improve the efficiency of the thin films when they are doped compared to being when they are individual thin films. I hope I answered the question.
Okay. My question goes to Master Robert. Thank you, Master Robert, for the informative presentation. As a construction engineering student, funded by SASCAL, I interested in energy and innovation. My question goes like, what skills or areas of study would you recommend focusing on to contribute to projects like sustainable aviation fuel development?
Thanks for the question. You're not going to like my answer because it's not going to be a niche answer to say there's one specific field you can go into. I myself, I'm a process engineer by academic training, but to make a contribution, personal opinion in this field, I think, you could be an electrical engineer, you could be a mechanical engineer, you could be a scientist, you could be an analytical specialist. The reality is that all of those fields will work very closely together. The engineer will not be able to, and the scientist will not be able to design the right catalyst in this case without having the analytical expertise to know what you're looking for and how to direct you to improve it. Likewise, you want those specialists who can do your economic evaluations and your business-minded people to direct you to say, well, is this going to be viable for scaling up or not? So don't fear, there's never one profession that one should go into, I think, in this space. You know, the world is one's oyster, and whatever you choose to do, you can make an impact in it.
Okay, thank you. I have the mic. Yeah. Thank you for the presenters for the insightful and well-delivered presentation. I have one question to Neil. I would like to know, among the CO2 capture technology that you used for your study, which one is the most efficient? And in a Sahelian context, which one you will recommend? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. The ones that I showed for capture of CO2 from cement plant is the amine wash process, which is absorption into an amine, which is a very well-established process. It's been used for many decades in power plants and existing refineries to capture CO2 out of industrial gas streams. So it's an established process. People know how it works. So that gives an advantage. The direct air capture system, this is very expensive. It's very new, and it's still struggling to get off the ground. Some people are saying that it doesn't have a future. We hope it does, but it's still at the very beginning. Whereas the amine wash is an existing process. There have been many improvements to that process in terms of the solvents that they use to capture the CO2. So it's much better than it used to be. I used a very basic form of it. There are much better options to that as well. Yeah, I hope that answers. Those are the only two we considered. So direct air capture or using the amine absorption process.
Thank you very much. Sorry that I'm going to make you stand up again because my question is directed to you. First of all, it's just a comment. I'm impressed by the work that you are doing, and I just wanted to you to clarify, for example, because I think we have had many misconceptions. People think that hydrogen produced using the sun and photovoltaics and electrolysis might be better than hydrogen produced using steam methane in reforming. But we always say this hydrogen is the same hydrogen no matter what process it made it. I take it that that's what you also mentioned with the jet fuel, with kerosene. That whether or not we made this kerosene from fossil fuel or from biomass and hydrogen, it's still kerosene and it will still burn in the same way and produce the same carbon dioxide. What makes it sustainable? Thank you.
Who was the question for?
No, my question is for another person.
The question is, what makes the kerosene produced using hydrogen and biomass sustainable or carbon friendly, or rather environmentally friendly, in comparison to kerosene produced from fossil fuels?
For Neil or myself?
Any one of the two of you. But there's a question which is related, I think, coming from, oh, it's not related.
Okay. Perhaps it was from where I said where the FT process, it doesn't matter where the hydrogen source comes from. And that remains whether we're using green, grey, white, or even all the different shades of hydrogen which there are out there. The FT process doesn't mind. Where the difference, and I guess where one makes a discrepancy between it, is on the economics. Because obviously grey hydrogen at this stage, either from any of the fossil fuel sources, is relatively cheap to make. And the green hydrogen from solar, or I guess from solar PV, will be more expensive, I guess, with all the additional upfront steps around water purification, the solar for driving that process as well. So it all comes down to economic viability at the end of the day, and which resource or which source can be most economically attractive to make that hydrogen. At the end of the day, it must come from a renewable source to be seen as a green product at the end of the day. SAF or aviation fuel is aviation fuel, whether it be Jet A1 made from fossils or otherwise. The source going into it will dictate whether it's green or not.
I can maybe add to that, just to say that the conventional hydrogen is made through steam methane reforming. So you already have methane in there, there's carbon involved in that process to make hydrogen, and it's usually a byproduct of refinery processes. When you make it with renewable electricity and water, that's all. There's no carbon in it. You're only bringing in water and making the hydrogen that way. So there's no carbon going through the process that originates from hydrogen production, and that makes it sustainable. As long as you use renewable electricity and not electricity generated with coal plants, for instance. I hope that contributes to the answer.
Okay, my question goes to the online lady that presented agroforestry decontamination of a minefield. I hope she's listening. My question is, she also listed the contaminants, the heavy metals that are present in the soil, and now what surprised me is the choice of decontaminating crops. One of them, sunflower, which is a consumable item. And now we know the hazard of heavy metals in the food we eat. At the point, I saw somewhere there she made mention of acceptable limit. Why do we even plant what we can eat in a soil we already know is contaminated? And now talk about acceptable limit. I want her to clarify why the choice of consumable item in the agroforestry experiment. Thank you.
Yeah, Ms. Sal, I hope you are online and you got the question from the professor. The question is, why did you try growing crop in a contaminated area or something like that? I got it. So I think she was having two scenarios. One is under PV, one is, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, maybe she might not be online. Anyone to answer? Any expert? I guess I thought the professor said Ms. Harris is a student. If the professor is also online, she can answer. Yes.
Well, I am one of the professors of our thesis, so that's why maybe I take the chance to answer this. So the issue, we were well aware that we didn't want to use the food crops, but we wanted to see if the post-mining area has been used for cropping areas later by the farmers. So how is it going to affect into the food chain? So that's the reason why she chose these food crops to evaluate in the model. At the moment, it's only a theoretical model. So we are trying to do it as an extrapolation for the next phase. So at the moment, we want to understand the dynamics, what's going on. So that's the reason we chose the food crop. So don't worry, we are not going to plant food crops, but it might happen that there are farmers in the post-mining area who are going and also planting. And to prevent this and to get the knowledge. So this is the reason why we have chosen this. So I hope this answers. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that is a very important question and a very important answer, because when I get my land anywhere else, I just start planting. whether there was a mine, I just start planting and eating the cloth.
Thank you. My question is for Emmanuel. First of all, happy birthday. So my question, I was just wondering, with the floating PVs, are there any effect to marine life or aquatic life, and the general impact on aquaculture?
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, so this question, as I think this is not the first time I'm getting this kind of question. So studies are currently ongoing on that to determine the impact of agriculture. But currently, because it's still a great technology, for example, in Africa, we just have few floating PV like in Ghana, built up, and I think some others are just coming up. So, but currently, there's no like scientific backup to see that has a serious impact on the agricultural life. And the way the FPV is built, measures are taken to ensure that the agricultural life is preserved, because it's actually built in a way that it's suspended. So to protect the agriculture. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you everyone. I'm going now to close off, and we don't have time anymore. So can we please close off this session? Thank you very much. It was a very insightful.
I only hope that my voice won't be captured when they are taking the photo. Actually, it's separate from the photo. Very quick one. I just want to remind people, as we are going for tea break, we are coming back for, I think, 3-4 more presentations will be online, then will be done for the day. Now, just because before we go that, we break for tea break, I just want to make prior announcement that tomorrow, I think people have started receiving some notification about the dinner at 7 p.m. tomorrow. I think more information will be communicated too. We should just bear in mind. Then again, the most important thing again tomorrow, we'll be having 2 rooms, and I think this will be according to the way we prefer to be. Then again, there's some announcements that tomorrow morning we should come very early, because there will be some security issues. We might be delayed coming inside, so it's important that we come very early. Thank you. We can break for tea break. Then we come back again for the last session. Hello? Oh, early, around 8. No, not 6, of course. Just to ensure, because if we come exactly at the time we are starting, we might be delayed coming inside. Please, just some time, a bit early. Yeah. No, not really, but yeah, before starting time. So if we can grab tea very quickly and come back so that we can finish in time, that would be very beneficial for us.
Okay, good afternoon. We are now in the next phase. I will be the moderator. You could see all this while we have been dealing with production of renewable energy. We've been dealing with consumption or consumption management. So, but the next two presentation now will be on the economic impact of the macro impact of renewable energy production. So I have presenters online. My name is Professor David Chezuba. I'm from Namibia University of Science and Technology. So I am the presenter now. So I've confirmed the online presenters are there. The first presenter there is
Hello.
Let me confirm is there. Is Kayan
Korean
Sh-
Shanmugam, yes.
Kayan Shumugwan. Are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, thank you. So you are the next presenter.
Great.
You are, okay. The presentation is on the role of sustainable energy or production on West African economic growth, isn't it? Okay, yeah, so Kayan should go ahead.
Great, no, thank you so much. I just want to check, can everyone see my screen? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, your screen is shown and we are seeing you and we're hearing from you. You can just be a bit louder.
Cool, great.
Your time is 10 minutes. You try and maximize it. I will remind you when it is about maybe 3 minutes or 2 minutes. So it's your time now. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Mr. Moderator, and thank you everyone. Apologies for attending virtually. As you can imagine, life gets quite busy. So yeah, like the moderator said, my name is Korean Shanmugam. I'm an economist from a consulting firm called DNA Economics, based in Pretoria and Cape Town, South Africa. And today I'll be presenting a macroeconomic impact assessment we did for a broader study team focusing on the Saldanha hydrogen hub scenario. So our study applied an input-output model to estimate the potential economic impacts through to 2050 of a planned PTX investment in Saldanha Bay, South Africa. And for those of you who don't know, Saldanha Bay municipality is a natural harbor in South Africa, in the west coast of South Africa, and it's home to quite an industrial area, and it's home to Southern Africa's deepest port, and historically has been quite industrial, etc. So the intention of our study was to try and understand the potential macroeconomic impacts of capital and operational expenditures for a theoretical plant if investments were to take place as anticipated. This study was part of a larger team based on PTX market opportunities in South Africa, which formed the basis for estimating PTX production volumes for South Africa, and then we separated that for the localized potential for the Saldanha Bay hydrogen hub. I'll try to be clear about which slides come from the broader study and which slides were the results of our impact assessment. So I think we all have a pretty good idea by now of the potential prospects of green hydrogen and PTX and the potential net benefits. But I guess what's important for this presentation is that to explain that we use explorative scenarios to examine multiple plausible pathways or what-if pathways for different production scenarios. And I'll give and just a point to note that these scenarios were developed by the broader team, not our economic team. But I'll give a brief overview of these scenarios because they're inputs into our macroeconomic impact assessment. So for the study, our team produced 3 scenarios which show how different policy and investment paths shape green hydrogen production in South Africa and in Saldanha Bay. So we have a scenario 0, or the dirt track scenario, where no GH2 is developed. There's limited renewable energies in the area and there's minimal impact. We have the provincial road scenario, which is a scenario where there's moderate uptake. We see about 0.5 million tons per annum GH2 production by 2050, and some partial policy coordination. And then scenario 2, where we see what we could refer to as the national highway scenario, where we have a coordinated rollout by policymakers, resulting in a 1.5 million tons per annum production in GH2 in 2050, accompanied by relatively strong exports from South Africa to the rest of the world. So the aim is to test how these choices translate to economic outcomes, essentially how policy ambition equals scale of impact. So we were able to quantify the potential GH2 production at our Saldanha Bay hub, specifically in what we call the provincial road and the national highway scenario. The team focused on 5 product streams, so ammonia for exports, bunker fuels, ammonia for fertilizer, green hydrogen or green steel for green steel, and there is an element of sustainable aviation fuel, but there's no Fischer-Tropsch facility at our proposed Saldanha Bay municipality hub, so that was not included in our inputs to our input-output model. So basically, we had the team also come up with some potential estimates of the other types of inputs we'd need. Our renewable energy capacity with solar and wind, and the type of costs on components we expect to sort of expend for our different scenarios, and we cost this and we use that as the inputs into our input-output, into our multiplier analysis. And like I said earlier, our team worked more on the macroeconomic impact assessment, but other teams covered thematic areas, including biodiversity, local socioeconomics, and green hydrogen impact. So basically, our team tried to use the multiplier analysis or input-output method to try and understand the potential contributions to GDP, export values, linkages, VAT taxable and imported capex revenue, and economic multipliers. But for today's presentation, we'll just isolate a few of those results and try and make sense of what they actually mean in terms of economic growth. So in terms of this slide presents the projected total output and export potential under the 2 infrastructure scenarios for the PTX economy. So under the provincial road scenario, we estimated about $1.7 billion coming from with exports contributing about $1.1 billion. And in contrast, the national highway scenario sees a significantly higher total output of $5 billion and $3.4 billion for an export. So to put this into perspective, the national highway scenario output would contribute something in today's terms roughly equivalent to 1.33% of South Africa's GDP, which is a meaningful addition considering that the current or the most recent electricity, gas, and water sector accounted for about 2% of GDP. So this highlights the potential of the PTX industry as a transformative sector in the economy. And in the context of South Africa, stating that the country wants to grow about 5 to 6% per year by 2030 in its national development plan, could be a transformative sector for investment. Building on the previous slide, we turn to the domestic investment requirements, and the net export impacts of the PTX industry. So a key consideration here is that while the sector has strong export potential, a significant portion of the required capital equipment will likely be imported, as South Africa doesn't have the domestic market to fund that sort of capital expenditure, and that will likely affect the trade balance. So if we look at the potential domestic investment going into the economy for the provincial road scenario for CapEx and OpEx, that sits about $800 million, and for the national highway, that sits at around $2.4 billion. And if we just put those numbers into context, South Africa's gross fixed capital formation for 2023 was about $57 billion. So these are, I guess, in short, pretty material numbers and really like contribute quite significantly to economic growth. And if we sort of shift to the net effect, the net trade effects, we find that even though there's a large import requirement, the PTX industry's net export contributions remain substantial. With the provincial road scenario in the most recent numbers, projected to add something in the way of 0.9% of South Africa's total exports, and the national highway to contribute something around 2.7% of South Africa's total exports in 2023. So that's just sort of trying to add some context. And if we were to compare this to existing export-driven manufacturing sectors, this would be close. I mean, the automotive industry in South Africa, which is one of our largest manufacturing exports sectors, accounts for about 4.2%. And then the catalytic chemical products sector contributes about 0.8% of total exports. So the national highway example of 2.7 would be a major manufacturing exporting sector if it were to come to fruition. And on the right-hand side of the slide, we illustrate the 2050 projections for potential economic impacts using levelized costs, and not because it was quite challenging to try and estimate the potential price for this product in 25 years. So using the cost estimates, trying to understand what is the sort of conservative contribution to GDP. So looking at 2050, the GDP in today's numbers, just to put it into context, would be something around 760 million to South Africa's GDP, and the national highway contributing about $1.9 billion to today's GDP. We're just trying to bring the numbers back to something that we'd understand. And this is, again, using the baseline cost, levelized cost, as opposed to trying to use the predicted market price in the future. So just these would be conservative output contributions. And the next slide, we try to present backward and forward linkages for both of these infrastructure scenarios. So what are backward and forward linkages? So a backward linkage is basically how much a sector stimulates demand for inputs from suppliers, and forward linkages indicate how much a sector provides key inputs that other industries rely on. So essentially, the higher the linkages, the more economic activity a sector generates beyond its direct operations. So for the provincial road scenario on the left-hand side here, the operational expenditure associated falls under the low backward and low forward linkages category, which means that routine operations and maintenance don't significantly boost industries or enable other sectors. Whereas capital expenditure in the provincial road scenario actually has high backward and high forward linkages. This indicates that infrastructure investment creates strong demand for suppliers and builds assets that other sectors can depend on. So in simple terms, this means that while day-to-day operations have limited economic spillovers, investing in infrastructure creates a much larger ripple effect throughout the economy, especially for regional development. On the right-hand side, we have the backward and forward linkages for OpEx and CapEx in the national highway scenario. And we find that despite the scale of the investment, the economic benefits are more contained within the sector itself, rather than generating wider economic stimulus across industries. And a key reason for that is that larger investments can absorb resources within a confined supply chain, leaving fewer spillover effects with the broader economy. However, this impact can change if the capital expenditure is localized, meaning that If more of the investment is sourced from South Africa, there will be bigger economic spillovers.
You may begin to conclude now.
Great. No, thank you so much. Just to conclude, I mean, the analysis tried to demonstrate that the PTX investment can be a meaningful macroeconomic contribution to South Africa. Under a coordinated and high ambitious pathway, the national highway, the PTX could add between 1 and 1.5 to national GDP and 2% to total exports by 2050. Saldanha Bay emerges as a strategic hub linking renewable resources, industrial capacity, and export infrastructure. However, the extent of the impact depends on how much localization takes place, and realizing this potential will require clear policy coordination, investment certainty, and infrastructure readiness to attract sustained private sector participation. So in essence, PTX is an industrial development and trade competitiveness opportunity for South Africa, especially in the context of the just energy transition and CBAM. Thank you. That is it. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much. Let's give him a hand of applause. Yes, you can keep your questions. You will stay around for the questions after the next presentation. Then we come back to the questions. So the next presenter will be, we have a committee. Are you online? Committee, are you online?
Yeah, I'm online.
Okay, thank you. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, you can start to project.
All right.
You have 10 minutes to present. After, when I intervene, you will be left with 2 or 3 minutes to go.
Can you see my screen, please?
No, we don't. Yeah, it's okay. We can see it now. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm Kamite Mahamadou. I'm from the WASCA program, especially in hydrogen specialty. So thank you very much. My topic is the role of sustainable energy on West Africa economic growth. So the country I was focused on are Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, Senegal. So this is the outline of the work, starting from introduction, vision, and perspective. So now, as you all know, in the context of the climate change and the depletion of fossil fuel, the transition to sustainable energy has become urgent and the strategic priority. The extreme weather event and the degradation of our environment underscore the profound need to transform our energy system. So, as you all know, in West Africa, despite having renewable energy potential for about more than 2,000 gigawatts in terms of installed capacity potential, but we are still suffering from some of the lowest electrification rates for about 200 million people living without access to electricity. So right now, we are facing two main challenges. The first one is the rapid growth of the demand, which is driven by the population and the economic growth. And the second one is the need to cut our greenhouse gas emissions. So to deal with that, we made different research objectives. The first one is to quantify the exploitable renewable energy potential of my selected countries in terms of solar, wind, and hydro. So the second one is to estimate the extent to which increasing renewable energy use can reduce our CO2 emissions over the medium and long term. And the last one is to evaluate how this potential can meet our future energy demand by 2050 and the different development trajectory. So now, this is the workshop of the work to facilitate the understanding. So everything has started by collecting data from international websites, and the work has been divided into 3 main parts. The first part is to project our GDP in 3 different scenarios, and the second part is to estimate the electricity that will be needed for the different development trajectories, and the third part is to estimate the exploitable renewable energy potential of each country. Now, so as I said earlier, everything has started by collecting data. These are the different websites. So now when we come to the data processing, so now here we use the European Central Bank method to project our different GDP growth rate scenario. So we have started by making the average of our historical data of GDP growth rate to know what is the average one. And after that, we calculate the standard deviation to know what is the dispersion of the historical data around the average. So from that, by adjusting our standard deviation with our GDP growth rate, we're gonna get our optimistic scenario growth rate, based in scenario, and pessimistic scenario. At my right, you can see the formula that we use to forecast our different GDP scenario. So now the second part is to make an estimation of electricity consumption by 2050. We use the global linear regression. This method has been used by Ibitoye and Adenikiju for Nigerian electricity projection. So we use the same thing by using different development level countries in terms of electricity consumption and GDP to see what will be, what is the link between them, and also to get our global linear regression equation that will allow us to forecast our electricity consumption by 2050. So the third part is now is to estimate how much energy can be generated from the installed capacity. Those that have been collected from the arena.
We can't hear you anymore. Hello? Maybe there's a break in the signal or something. Hello? Okay, so what we'll do is let us ask a question to the first presenter. While we are on it, probably he could be back. Then he will continue. Do we have a question for Shengogan, the first presenter? Any question for the first presenter? Crayon, are you online there?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, looks like he's back. Are you back now?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay. Well, continue from where you stopped. Crayon will come back to you.
Okay, so
We don't see the slides.
I was saying that.
Put their slides back.
I was saying. After trying to make a novel energy plan for target and also meet our demand. So these are the steps that we.
Hello, I said we don't see your slide. Can you put it back? The slides. The presentation slide. I hope it's not from his side. Is it from our side? Okay. Let's go back to Crayon. Crayon, are you there to answer a question?
Yes.
Okay. It's fine. Probably you wanted to keep to time, and you didn't actually tell us how you generated the climate simulation in your model. And that's one question. The what do you call it? The green energy simulation in your model. The second question is, I saw a place you mentioned risk adjusted GDP. That means you have incorporated risk in the GDP calculation, and you didn't tell us how you achieved that. Can you please address that, while I also know if there are more people on the podium, on the floor, that can ask more questions. Wait, let's see. Any more question from the floor for Ryan? Yes, there's a question here. Mike, please. Okay.
Thank you so much, Kran, for that very informative submission. I think since the topic touches into the the financial models aspect, in case I missed it, I just wanted to appreciate, as for your investigation, if you would have gotten some kind of estimate in terms of the potential, if you put it in monetary terms, what is your forecast in terms of the potential portfolio of the industry, the South African green hydrogen industry, let's say in the next 5 years? Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's take more question. Any more question before you answer? Sure. Okay. So you can now answer. The first one is my question, which is about how you incorporated greenhouse production in your model, in the input-output, and how you run your risk-adjusted GDP. Then the second question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I guess the first question around how we incorporated greenhouse gas production is, well, there was another team, part of the broad team that was responsible for actually going into the mechanisms of how they calculated GH, or greenhouse gas production, and how much potential would be saved, I guess, by going down the route of producing GH2. But basically what we did for our team is that team gave us a sort of I guess, a equivalent of how much per unit of GDP. We basically just scaled it up in terms of how much GDP contributions we had from our analysis. So the greenhouse gas, it was a bit outside of our portfolio. And then in terms of the sort of risk adjustment, we did sort of use an estimated price in the future, but we acknowledge as a limitation of the study that is a huge assumption to make, or what the price of these sort of products will be in 2050. So we had another person in the team, in part of the sort of the engineering side, that gave us levelized costs for ammonia and the levelized costs for hydrogen. And we tried to, I guess, price the potential output at that cost in 2050 as a way to show, this is the baseline of what we expect the GDP value contributions to be. And yeah, that's kind of how we try to incorporate some sort of risk management as opposed to just showing numbers that sometimes there is a lot of estimates, trying to bring it back to reality, try and bring it back to the context that we're sort of speaking in. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, the gentleman asked a question around sort of the 5-year sort of prospects for green hydrogen in South Africa, from sort of a economic, I guess, monetary perspective. I think a lot of this project that we were, I guess, estimating the impacts of is pre-feasibility. I don't have a significant view on the status of other GH2 production in South Africa, so I'm unfortunate for that. But I think at least for the Saldanha Bay area, it's still some way to go. I can't imagine a lot will happen in the next 5 years, at least in this context. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the questions.
Okay. The question was
any other
the question was on projection. I was wondering if you can answer that question with the model you are using there. Do you project? Can you project with input output?
Yeah. So with input output, obviously it's a static model, right? So you'd have to. What we actually did was we tried to project. We came up with values as if it was in today's terms, and in 2050. Theoretical economy using projections, what we think, how GDP will evolve, etc. And then try to time value adjust inflation back to today, taking long-term averages, etc. And I will probably acknowledge that is a limitation of the study. But yeah, one thing to note is that the study was taken further by I'm not going to name the research group, but using a more dynamic model. So we highlight, we conducted a study in 2024, and we did tell who we were sort of producing the study for that the main limitation is exactly what you're saying around projections, but it was taken forward, and there is another study out there. I don't think it's public yet, but around projecting into the future more accurately, because we do acknowledge that the input-output model is static, and in order for us to get those future productions, we had to take, I think, a little bit of a simplistic approach to try and get those future values.
Thank you very much. You have already mentioned what I was expecting to hear from you. For you to project, you use more dynamic models. You have just mentioned it. Thank you very much. Is there any further question? If there's no question, we can give him a hands of applause.
Thank you.
Do we still have a committee on the line? Committee, are you still there? Okay, you are back. Okay, try to project your presentation. Project it from us. It's not from our side, it's from your side. Are you still there?
I have problem with my connection, so I think my connection is not stable.
Pardon, we didn't hear you.
Yeah, I'm hearing you, but my connection is not stable. I even don't know how to solve this problem because it's a national problem.
Perhaps, is it from our side? Our technical crew, is it from our side? He's saying he doesn't know anymore what to do. Maybe he thought he has done what the best he can do.
I think the problem is from my side. The network is very bad here currently in
Oh, it's from your side.
So
okay.
Yes, from my side. The
okay.
network is very bad.
Okay, let's give him a hand of applause. Okay, thank you very much. You've heard the presentations, how we can as well incorporate green hydrogen production into a general equilibrium model or input-output model and run some multiplier analysis to see the impact. But we saw a question of projections. When you do projections, you also want to make it dynamic, and you can also use maybe much more behavioral models like general equilibrium, like CGE models and so on. So apart from the production side of it, apart from the consumption or demand management, you can also look at the economic impact, the macroeconomic impact. That is what Karen has done. Probably in the future or in most advanced studies, you can also look at making it dynamic. We have come to the end of this session. Let's give them up. Kieran, we have come to the end of presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Okay. And thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm also saying thank you. My session is over. I'm handing over to the next presenter, the next moderator. now it's only me and my people are online. Oh, how do we take the photograph now? Kigian, don't worry, we'll take our own when we see next time.
Thank you very much, Prof. Now we are transitioning into the next session. That is about biomass and waste as a sustainable resource. But before we go into that, I want you to shake hand with somebody on your right-hand side. On your left-hand side, actually, I want your immediate, not from the other, your immediate. I deliberately said this because I have a problem with two people. I want you to have your attention. I have a problem with two people, and those two people are the one that sat next to you. One is Mr. S&T, because it always forces people to go and spend money. Another one is Mrs. Correcting Kids. After lunch, Mrs. Correcting Kids will go correct kid but never come back. So that's why the hall is now empty. People went and they never came back. My name is Sioni Icera, and I'm going to be the moderator of this session. I am aware that we are behind time. Therefore, I would like to request Isaac Willing to project his presentation and take us through. Okay, we can see your slides. You have 10 minutes to take us through.
Okay, Mr. Moderator, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clear.
Okay, thank you. So, good afternoon, Mr. Moderator. Good afternoon, researchers and professors, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is Isaac S. Woodin-Deter, and I'm here to present our research findings under the topic biochar production from Pancana share as alternative catalyst for thermochemical hydrogen production. My research presentation will follow this online. So generally, the world energy landscape is characterized by the dominant use of fossil fuel, as seen in this data presented by the International Energy Agency showing the global energy consumption. And they has led the world to two substantial issues resulting from one, greenhouse gas emission that is contributing to climate change and sustainability. Therefore, research is now focusing on an alternative and sustainable clean energy fuel, which is hydrogen, that is essential for future global energy economy. Now, biomass gasification is a sustainable pathway for hydrogen-rich gas production. However, this technology is challenged with two issues. The issue of tar formation, as seen in this diagram showing carbon agglomeration within a reactor, which reduces process efficiency, and also catalyst problem. For instance, the traditional catalyst like metal-based catalyst, nickel, platinum, that is very costly, as well as they have issue of poisoning or susceptible to deactivation. And so the motivation behind the research is to produce a carbonaceous catalyst that is biochar, and with a very cost-effective aspect resistant to sinstaurin at a high temperature, as well as has high activity and sustainable. Now, how then can we produce biochar? Biochar basically is produced via thermochemical conversion of biomass, and among the various thermochemical pathways, we have pyrolysis to be a very sustaining process for optimum biochar production. It is so because you are able to manipulate like temperature, heating rate, and resident time for optimum biochar production. Palm kernel share, on the other hand, is an abundant agricultural residue from oil palm. It is very common to Southeastern Asia and or West Africa. And study has shown that more than 95% of PKS is disposed of in landfill. As seen in this image showing a landfill of PKS, and these are led to environmental pollution, for instance, methane emission on landfill, as well as soil contamination. It is also interesting to note that while industrialized nations make use of more than 80% of the PKS for industrial energy, top African producers, for instance, Ghana or Nigeria, the Cote d'Ivoire, they show total lack of valorization. Therefore, it is the major aim of this research to produce biochar using PKS as feedstock via pyrolysis and utilize the precursor for hydrogen production. The specific objective will involve with optimization of the PKS biochar production, characterization, as well as studying the potential use as catalyst for biomass gasification process. To achieve this process, we carry on these materials and methods. So the materials involve PKS and some reagent, as well as the material preparation involve pre-treatment such as grinding, washing with deionized water for 3 hours, and then oven drying at 80 degrees Celsius for about 48 hours. The experimental design involved with a response surface methodology to study the biochar yield, making use of Boss banking design, and then Minitab software to run the regression analysis. There was roughly 15 experimental runs with temperature being studied between 300 to 500 degrees Celsius, and the heating rate as factor B being studied 5 to 15 degrees Celsius per minute, and the resident time 60 to 120 minutes respectively. After the pre-treatment process, the pyrolysis occur within horizontal turbulent funnels to produce a PKS biochar as seen in this figure. And then the physical chemical analysis are done to underscore the proximate analysis, pH, iodine number to indicate the potential absorption capability of the biochar, as well as bulk density and compact density to understand the compact structure during biomass gasification. As seen in this diagram of flow or underscoring the EOD or determination process. Results and discussion. The pyrolysis result shows that the higher yield was seen at PKS material T3 will produce at 300 degrees Celsius, 15 degrees Celsius per minute, 90 minutes with 59.85 yield, and the lower yield was seen at 500 degrees Celsius, 15 degrees Celsius per minute, and 90 minutes with 35.30 yield. For optimum biochar production, the ANOVA summary indicate that the R square value of 99.41%, indicating that the model actually consider all underlying variability, as well as a very high R square predictor of 92.04%, indicating the reliability of the model to be used at an industrial level. Of the three factors, we have the temperature to be the factor that has significant influence on the yield, followed by the heating rate with p-value less than 0.05% or 0.05. And however, the resident time had no significant influence on the yield. The model also showed no significant lack of faith as seen a p-value greater than 0.05, indicating that this model is robust and is credible, as well as ready to be employed at industrial level. Now, to select the optimal biochar precursor for hydrogen production, we use the contour chart to underscore how heating rate and temperature influence the biochar yield. As you can see from this diagram, at lower temperature, we have higher yield, roughly above 55 yield percent, but then all very low carbon metrics, as well as high volatile content. But then as temperature increase from 300 to 500 degrees Celsius, we have enhanced carbon material, which is very essential for catalytic property. And then excess temperature also resulted to excess devolatilization, which is not actually essential for catalytic properties. So therefore, the optimal biochar was taking at 500 degrees Celsius and heating rate of 15 degrees Celsius per minute, resident time of 60 minutes. And this biochar take into consideration maximizing yield while considering low volatile, high phase carbon, which is essential for catalytic property. Now, to validate this process, we run a predator model which gave a result of 36.02 and the experimental yield of 36.26%, indicating a high accuracy of about 99.8%. Now, the physical-chemical characterization for proximal composition underscored from this particular figure shows that as temperature increase, there is a decrease in volatile content as seen in PKS material produced at 300 degrees Celsius with very high volatile content, roughly between 40 to 59%, while increase in temperature from 300 to 500 degrees Celsius, there is decrease in volatile content below 20%. Also, the ash content shows slight increase with increase in temperature as seen in PKS material produced at 300 degrees Celsius with low ash content, but increase in temperature from 300 to 500 degrees Celsius indicate high ash content between 3 to 4 percent, indicating that there was breakdown of biomass mineral during high temperature pyrolysis. And also, the phase carbon show increase with increase in temperature as seen in PKS material produced at 300 degrees Celsius that had high or low phase carbon between 39 to 40%, while increase in temperature from 300 to 500 show high phase carbon between 70 to about 80%. Now, how then can this material behave in biomass gasification? This material show a high yield and a yielding number of 159 milligram per gram, which indicate that this material is capable of tire absorption during biomass gasification process, which is also a current process of traditional catalysts. And also a high phase carbon of 77.12 indicate enhanced carbometry at Icera and a very long catalytic.
You must begin to conclude. You must begin to conclude.
Yes, so, and a relatively low carbon also indicate a stable carbon structure but a low gasification process. So to conclude, this study was able to successfully valorize PKS residue as catalyst in biomass gasification process. And further research could look into pilot scale validation of the process as well as performing techno-economic and life cycle analysis for commercial viability. These are some references used for my work in the authors. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I know it's the afternoon. We can do better than that. Thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. We will come back with questions after the next presentation. I am informed that the last presenter, that is Faustina Esudu, who will not be able to present. So therefore now we are only left with one, and that is Komlen Wanagesh, the surname. Komlen, you are the next, presenting on simulation of biohydrogen production by sequential dark photo fermentation of a pine apple waste. So you have 10 minutes.
Please, can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay. Thank you, dear moderator. Good afternoon, dear Icera 2025 conference organizers and esteemed participants. I'm Komla Wenanyo from Togo, and I'm delighted to present before you my research work on simulation of hydrogen production by sequential dark photo fermentation using pineapple waste as substrates. The presentation will follow this outline, so without any further ado, let us start with the introduction. Currently, looking at the energy situation in Togo, biomass accounts for 69% in the global energy supply, but this biomass is mostly used in its traditional form, which led to important losses in forest cover of the country.
Sorry, I don't know whether you are giving us the preface, but the slides are not moving.
Is it good now?
Yes, they are moving now.
Okay. So let's start with the introduction. So currently looking at the energy situation in Togo, biomass accounts for 69% in the global energy supply, but this biomass is mostly used in its traditional form, which led to important losses in forest cover of the country. A study conducted by Combate et al. Revealed that between 1985 and 2020 each year, Togo lost in average around 420 kilometers squared of its forest cover, which is huge. Currently, the access rate of electricity in Togo is around 63%, but with large disparities between rural and urban zones. In fact, in rural zones, only 25% of the population has access to electricity. On the other hand, looking at the agricultural sector of the country, the pineapple sector is fast growing. With recent projects like the PROCAT project, the national pineapple production have seen 50% improvements between 2019 and 2022. And more recently, the Togolese government implemented a national strategic investment action plan, which aimed to double the pineapple production by 2028 and to increase the local processing rate from 35% to 75%. In such context, it's obvious that the pineapple sector will be generating important quantities of waste in the near future. Currently, Togo counts around 50 micro and small-scale pineapple processing units and 20 medium to large-scale pineapple processing units. One of them is Juice Delis, which processes per day 25 tons of pineapple fruits and generates more than 8 tons of pineapple waste daily. On this figure, we have the waste disposal set of Juice Delis before the composting process. And as you can observe it from the figure, large streams of pineapple waste are generated on daily basis, but the company relies solely on composting as waste valorization pathway. And so far, no energy valorization pathway and its potential benefits have been investigated. On the other hand, as far as the simulation of biochemical valorization processes like dark fermentation and photofermentation is concerned, the majority of the works reported in the literature simulate both processes using either equilibrium assumption or stoichiometric modeling, which is very limited when it comes to take into account important process parameters like inhibition effects, the impact of pH or microbial growth rates. And to date, at the best of our knowledge, there is no existing Aspen Plus model which combine both process sequentially, taking into account important biochemical parameters like the intermediate metabolic accumulation or the light dependency of photofermentation coupled with techno-economic and life cycle assessments. Therefore, the current research is motivated by the aims to investigate the optimal condition for biohydrogen production by sequential dark photofermentation of pineapple waste using Aspen Plus simulations tool. The specific objectives are formulated as follows. The first one is to characterize the pineapple waste and analyze its properties relevant to biochemical valorization pathways like dark fermentation and photofermentation. The second objective is to to simulate the dark fermentation, photofermentation, and then the integrated sequential processes using Aspen Plus. And the third objective is to conduct a sensitivity analysis on important process parameters. With this background presented, I will now present the material and method used to conduct the current research. On this figure, we have the methodology used, and it can be divided into two important parts. The first part is experimental, and it deals with the characterization of the feedstock in terms of ultimate analysis. fiber analysis and proximity analysis, and therefore the data obtained from this characterization is used as input variable in Aspen simulation tool to simulate dark fermentation, photo fermentation, and then the integrated sequential process. On this figure, we have the flowsheet developed in Aspen Plus simulation software to simulate the standalone processes, namely the dark fermentation and the photo fermentation processes. And here we have the underlying chemical reaction. The hydraulic step, which is common to both processes, is simulated based on the extent of reaction, as it is the rate limiting step of the process. And then for the dark fermentation parts, we use a kinetic model with the underlying kinetic constants that we have here using the first order kinetic approximation. And similarly, photo fermentation is also simulated using a kinetic model. On this figure, we have the flowsheet developed for the integration of the sequential process, and as we can observe it is an extension of the standalone processes with the addition of these two units for further conversion of effluents from the dark fermentation process. And we have in the table the different equation for the conversion of different volatile fatty acids obtained from the dark fermentation process. To ensure the reliability of our model, this model have been validated using secondary data existing in the literature. Here on the left side, we have the validation of the dark fermentation model, and on the right side, we have the validation of the photo fermentation model. And as we can observe it from this data, from this picture, we have a good agreement between the simulation model and the experimental results published in the literature. Now, with this methodology established, I will present key results obtained from our research. First, starting by the feedstock properties, here on the left side, we have the approximate analysis on dry matter basis, and on the right side, we have the fiber content on dry matter basis. As you can observe, the feedstock is characterized by very high volatile matter content, high carbohydrate content, and low lignin and ash content. And this trend is good for biochemical valorization pathway, as through these processes, we have the volatile matter content, which is valorized in this valorization pathway, and the low lignin and ash content is also good for these processes, as it will present low risk of substrate inhibition. On this figure, we have the cumulative hydrogen yield through the dark fermentation process, and as we can observe it, within the few hours of fermentation, we have very high substrate degradation, which is correlated by very high hydrogen production. And within the first 72 hours, we obtain more than 80% of the global hydrogen production. This trend suggests an optimal hydraulic retention time between 72 hours and 96 hours for the dark fermentation path, and we observe also that we have high hydrogen production rates. On this figure, we have the cumulative hydrogen production and substrate degradation through the photofermentation process. And as we can observe from this trend, we have gradual substrate consumption, high hydrogen production, and only partial substrate consumption, on contrary to what was observed through the dark fermentation process. So this suggests that with the photofermentation part, we have higher hydrogen yield, but very low substrate degradation. This figure presents the effect of organic loading rates on one-stage processes. And as we can observe, we have a saturation trend in both cases. For organic loading rates above 20 for the dark fermentation process, and organic loading rates above 10 for the photofermentation process. So with this, we can suggest that for the dark fermentation process, it is better to operate for organic loading rates around 20, and for the photo fermentation, it is good to operate at organic loading rates.
You have a minute to conclude.
Okay. So here we have the integrated sequential process, and as you can observe, the process is characterized by very high hydrogen yields, around 800 milliliter per gram of volatile solid, which is far better than what was observed in standalone processes. And in this table, we have the heating value conversion efficiency, which corroborates what was observed so far in the standalone processes. So therefore, to conclude, within this research, we have developed a baseline model to investigate biohydrogen production, and therefore for future investigation, we will include code that will investigate important process parameters like pH and accumulation of inhibitory elements. Here are some references used within this research. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Another round of applause. Good news, the colleague who was not available online is now available. Bad news, those who were emotionally and physically prepared to go, we have to postpone that for the next 10 minutes. So let me quickly request Faustina Esud to please load her presentation and take us through. You have exactly 10 minutes to do so. We can see your slide.
Hello, good afternoon, dear professors. Good afternoon, moderator. I am Faustina Siedu, and I'm here to present to you on my research findings under the topic Comparative Analysis of Bioethanol Production in Ghana and West Africa. Here is the outline for my presentation. The introduction. Bioethanol is a renewable energy that is derived from biomass sources and can be used directly in transportation vehicles and in cooking stoves, or be blended with petrol, which can help reduce greenhouse gas emission as well as supporting energy transition goal. However, currently the bioethanol industry in Ghana is not fully commercialized, whereas other West African and African countries also exhibit varied developmental levels and technological adoption. Also, the bioethanol sector in Ghana and other West African countries is characterized by persistent policy and infrastructural constraints, as well as competition with subsidized fossil fuels. For this reason, this research the main aim was to compare the capabilities, challenges of bioethanol production in Ghana and 8 other African countries, so as to identify transferable practices that can be used to inform the sustainable growth of bioethanol development in Ghana. The specific objectives were to, 1, assess Ghana's bioethanol feedstock potential and policy landscape, analyze regional countries' models for lessons, and finally, to identify transferable practices for technology and value chains. In this research analysis, a systematic literature review and policy analysis was adopted through peer-reviewed articles, government documents, and industry reports, as well as quantitative analysis of feedstock yields and production capacities was looked into. And finally, scenario analysis covering feedstock dynamics, policy frameworks and implementation, technological innovation, socioeconomic and gender dimensions, and environmental sustainability. The results and discussion. Through the systematic literature review, it was realized that Ghana produces about 20 to 30 million tons of cassava annually, where cassava peels can yield about 280 to 380 liters of ethanol per ton. And also, it was discovered that Ghana produces about 29 million tons of residue from crops annually in the country, where this potential can help produce about 200 million liters of bioethanol annually, where currently just 5% is utilized. The policy framework and implementation dimension also indicated that in 2010, Ghana developed a bioethanol policy that was aimed at blending 10% bioethanol into 90% petrol, which was later, by 2020, which was later extended to 20% blend of ethanol and then 80% of petrol by 2030. However, currently it is discovered that none of these aim has been achieved. Whereas regional models indicate that Nigeria has a stronger distribution pipeline network that aids in bioethanol blending in the country. Malawi has successfully been blending ethanol into petrol in the country since 1982 to presently. And Ethiopia, on the other hand, in 2019 and between 2019 and 2009 and 2018 was able to blend bioethanol into petrol, which saved the country about $30 million on oil importation. The technological infrastructure dynamics also indicated that currently, there is limitation of second-generation bioethanol development in Ghana. However, there is opportunity for the country to utilize the abundant resource or abundant residue resource in the country to develop decentralized model refineries for bioethanol in the countries. The regional innovation also indicated that in Kenya, there is a use of marginal land to produce or to grow cassava, which is used to produce bioethanol. Finally, the socioeconomic and the environmental perspective indicated that bioethanol development in Ghana could contribute to rural employment and development. Also, it could reduce the risk of deforestation associated with the use of traditional biomass such as firewood and charcoal. Bioethanol could also reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40 to 80%. In 2009, when the implementation of Jetrofarm biodiesel projects were implemented in Mali, there was the adoption of community involvement as well as gender-inclusive models, which enabled the success of these projects as of the time they were implemented, which contributed to rural electrification in Mali. For the successful development of bioethanol projects in Ghana, there should be an establishment of enforceable blending mandates, as seen in the case of Malawi. And also there should be an investment in decentralized modular biorefineries, as seen in Kenya and Brazil, a global bioethanol leader. There should also be the promotion of regional cooperation amongst the West African countries, and as well as adoption of international sustainability and carbon certification, which can help set standard for bioethanol exportation in Ghana. There should also be a public public-private partnership amongst the various stakeholders of bioethanol, such as the National Petroleum Authority, Ghana's Energy Commission, and as well as other NGOs and other institutions that are interested in investing in these kind of projects. As we are all aware, the initial stages of bioethanol projects are usually cost intensive. In conclusion, the systematic literature review indicated that Ghana has strong potential for bioethanol development in the country. However, success stories depend on better policy enforcement, infrastructure, and community involvement. The future research should focus on pilot implementation of the recommended transferable practices. Also, Ghana could place itself as a regional leader when it comes to bioethanol production by partnering with ECOWAS and other West African countries, which can help the country achieve its Sustainable Development Goal 7, which states clean and affordable energy for all. Here are some references used during the research analysis. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I don't know, for some reason, in our country we have a woman who is a president. So the last presenter, who is a woman, finished within time. They say women power. Do men agree to that? Women power? We say yes. Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. I think we can now digest the 3 presentations by engaging the presenters. And I don't know how good are we with time. Are we having a time cut that we're supposed to be here? Otherwise, I would allow people to speak until tomorrow, while there will be an additional bill. Yes, Prof?
Thank you. I have a question for 2 of the presenters, the first and the last one. The first one I see is talking about, I see from the presentation, the ash content of the experiment increases as the output increases. That means the simple explanation there is, interpretation there is, the feedstock is not a good stock. It's not good for whatever he want to produce, because as the output increases, the ash content increases. So what is it a he or she? What is she saying about that? Because she's trying to recommend palm kernel for that project. But from the presentation, ash content increases as we would have, and for a good feedstock, ash content is supposed to decrease, supposed to be lower than the output. As the output increases, ash content is supposed to be decreasing. That's the question I have for her or him. I can't remember.
That's Faustina?
Yeah, the first person, yeah. Then the last person I have...
sorry, Prof, you mean the first presenter?
Yes.
Okay, it's a he.
It's a he, okay.
Yes.
Now this last presenter, he's talking about producing ethanol. Ethanol production the question is not about producing ethanol. The problem is it feasible? Is it economically feasible to do it? Many African countries have tried it. It's not economic, it's not cost effective, it's not feasible. Number one, it will be competing with the resources, the input. It will be competing with consumption of food security, everything. It will be competing with consumption, cassava consumption. The moment you start reallocating resources to production of ethanol, then it will affect consumption. It will affect people. If ethanol is more lucrative, you will say that now food security will become a problem. and cassava is a major food staple for Ghana. So that's the problem I have with that. The problem is not producing it. The problem is it feasible? So did she think about that? Thank you.
Okay. Faustina, the question is about feasibility. Any other question? Yes, over there.
Okay, thank you. My question goes to the second presenter.
Second presenter, Comlen.
Yes, please. Yeah, I noticed when he was inputting the data into the Aspen to develop or to simulate the process for biohydrogen, the hydrolysis process, he tends to use the extent of reaction as the subsequent process, as the acidogenesis to the other process. He was using the kinetic constant for each reaction. Now, I wanted to know what informed that, because we know that if you use the kinetic constant, it gives you room to actually, as in it doesn't restrict the process, but I don't know if probably those values are not available, because using the extent of reaction, you're basically telling it to stop at one end. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we can now start with the first presenter. Can you please respond to the question?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Sorry, Mr. Moderator, can you hear me?
Yes, I think there is some echo, but just try to maybe speak up.
Okay, so let me say thank you, Prof, for the question. So as it relates to the question that has to do with the increase in ash content as the temperature increase. So like the research finding indicate that there was slight increase in ash content as the temperature increased, because you know that as temperature increase, there is timber or secondary reactions that are occurring. So timber cracking of the biomass material. So like so the timber cracking of the biomass material will actually increase the ash content. So you have breakdown of other mineral content. So like the ash content will contain mineral, like for example, calcium, magnesium, and so forth. So this just as the result of the increase in temperature. That's why at a very high temperature, for instance, in biomass gasification process, at a very high temperature you have or burn off. So the catalytic burn off. So there will always be increasing ash content as the biomass material or the temperature increase when it comes to biomass. Yeah, so for the PKS material, the nature of the PKS material shows ash content roughly between 2 to 4% or weight percent. So and my findings indicate that in fact the optimal biochar material between that was produced at about 500 degrees Celsius show ash content of 2.37%, which also indicate that is a very good material. It can also promote or it can serve as a promoter or during a biomass gasification process. So yes, it is true that there will be increasing ash content as the temperature increase, because there is breakdown of biomass material and secondary cracking that result to the mineral content being broken down. Thank you. I hope I do answer or respond to your question properly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We move to Faustina. Can you please respond to the question?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Prof, for the question. Okay, so in my presentation, as we can see, I was promoting second generation bioethanol in Ghana. As currently, the bioethanol in most African countries is dominated by the use of food crops, which he said directly compete with food. So I am advocating for the use of crop residues. And in Ghana is the second largest producer of cassava in Africa and even globally. So this indicates that if the
residues of cassava is used to produce bioethanol, since it is always or is mostly produced on a larger scale, there will also be larger scale of residue for its continuous production. And also, I indicated there should also be the use of water hyacinth. Water hyacinth is it's a plant or an invasive plant that can also be used in addition to residues for bioethanol production in Ghana. Thank you. I hope I did answer the question.
Thank you very much. We move to Komlan.
Okay, thank you, dear moderator. So here in our current study, we use extent of reaction for the hydrolysis step, because this step is the rate limiting step of the process. So it is difficult to find data related to this step in literature, and also its kinetic depend on the pretreatment method used. So here we use the extent of reaction based on the best condition available in the literature for the pretreatments of our lignocellulosic biomass. That's the main reason why we use the extents of reaction for the hydrolysis step in our study.
Okay,
Thank you, dear.
Thank you very much. Any further question, comment? Yes, over there. Oh, the other mic has retired. I can maybe bring this one. Okay, there he comes. And I think we should endeavor to finish. Yeah, over there.
Thank you. My question goes to Faustina. I would like to ask you about the logistic feasibility of processing cassava peels. Do you see that there are spatial concentrations that would allow economic feasibility in terms of amount that is being able to be collected at a specific location? Thank you.
Okay, Faustina, can you please respond?
Okay, thank you for the question. Okay, so in my presentation, I indicated that currently there is limitation on technology for bioethanol, second generation bioethanol in Ghana. But then, as I also indicated somewhere in my slide, cassava peels could yield about 280 to 320 liters per ton of cassava. So that is if there is partnership for bioethanol, the development of technologies that can process the cassava peels, then this can yield higher bioethanol for energy transition in Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that has brought us to the end of question and answer. But before I leave the stage, I just want us to ponder onto these three presentations, and should we have a favorable investment and funds for investment? The study done and presented by three presenters, are they offering sustainable alternative to fossil fuel that Africa and the world can transition into or begin to use? On that basis, I think I would like to thank you very much for listening. I am always hearing that the body begin to switch off to listening to English after 5. And I think it's also time for my English to become depleted. So We meet tomorrow. I understand I will also moderate one session in the morning. So from my side, we say I will be smiling at you tomorrow morning.
Another big round of applause. I'm actually standing here to acknowledge all our moderators from the first session until now. I know we have not given you the right honor as you stepped off the podium since the morning. So I would like to take this opportunity to recognize and applaud all our moderators for day one. Shall we? And in so saying that, we have obviously come to the end of the first day. And I'm glad to say that we obviously have covered some ground in terms of our day program. It is not often that you get to the end of the program without major glitches. So I'm quite grateful to the fact that we have been able to stick to time, to the fact that we have been able to close off with our last presentation for the day. I think except for the one or two challenges we had online presentation, I would say that we've pretty much been able to appreciate most of the submissions that were packed for the day. So I think that deserves a big round of applause. It is 10 minutes to 6. I think we've pretty much exhausted the time. We're supposed to finish by 17:20. Apologies for the slight deviation in time, but I think we can be able to do better tomorrow. At this stage, I would like to request that we have yet another closing group picture. And while saying that, still appreciate you for staying awake, especially in the afternoon. Normally they say that the graveyard shift starts immediately after lunch, but I was quite observant to realize that the coffee outside was working quite effectively in ensuring that we all stay awake. So I really applaud you for all your efforts today and your contributions. I think it came out in all platforms, the social media platforms. I've been able to appreciate contributions. So that means that we are really having a collective in terms of the deliberations. So thank you very much. A big round of applause. I think all the announcements for the day have been taken care of. So let me invite all of us to the stage here so that we can have one last round before we depart for the day. Thank you very much.